Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brand new series titled Run the Rift. My name is Explosive, and I'll be guiding players of all skill levels in how to become a better Riftbound player. Today, we're going to start things off with deck building and consistency within your deck. It's going to be a really fun series, and I hope you all enjoy. So, with that being said, let's start off with deck building. The first and most important thing is to select what legend you want to play. As of recording this video, Unleash hasn't released quite yet, so we only have 2 to 3 legends per color pairing to choose from. You want to pick whichever one you want to play with, and try to build a deck around that. Now, obviously, every legend has different playstyles, so whichever one feels the most fun to you, or the most competitive to you, should be the one that you look to try to go after. I'm going to use an example throughout this entire video, which is going to be my own Victor list, and just explaining the choices that I've made for the deck and how I got to the point of the deck that I'm happy about. So with that being said, we'll take a look. As we can see in the background, my deck is up. We're going to be using the site Piltover Archive. Not sponsored, just the site is absolutely awesome to use. If you guys are trying to build your own decks and you don't really want to commit to it and you just want to make a plan, this is going to be the perfect website for you guys to use, and I highly recommend it. It's the best one we've got right now, and the team working on this has done such an excellent job. It's also really community focused, which I really love, where you can actually submit your own decks to the archive, and other players can search them up and get ideas from you. So I think that's really awesome to have. So my idea, and where I really started with this deck, came from the Best of Victor from Las Vegas. Custom Dipped had a really, really awesome mid-range aggressive deck, and I liked the idea of that. So I decided that I was going to build a lot more aggressive style of it. So you can go on into the decks and go into the actual deck library here to go find any of the decks that you're looking for. You can also find them online through various different sites like Riftbound.gg. Will upload some really good breakdowns of the metagames from all of these large events that are ongoing throughout the year, so highly recommend that as well. But this is the one that I'll be taking a look at, is Custom Dips, and just going off the rip, this is a very aggressive deck. Not a ton of spells, but enough to still feel like you are having a good amount of control over the game. And this is where we'll get into a little bit of the talks about consistency. Within his list, he does have a bunch of one-ofs. Plundering Poros, Salvage, Vengeance, Time Warp, Glass Mixologist, and Riptide Rex. And a lot of players will say, doesn't that just ruin your consistency within the deck? And in a way, it kind of does. But it's really taking into account what that card is doing within your list. For example, Plundering Poro is a 2-might unit that comes down and can just take over a battlefield and give you a gold. We love gold. Gold's great. Especially in this list where there is no seals, and there is a decent amount of power within the deck, specifically looking towards the later game where you've got Riptide Rex, Singularity, and Thousand Tailed. We're not going to talk about Time Warp just yet. We will get there to that one, though. So that's going to really help with the early game and holding on to some power, as we are a hugely aggressive deck, as we'll get to in what the card that made me really want to build this deck, which is Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao Vigilant is one of the most aggressive order cards in the game right now, and really can take over a game out of nowhere, because you can spike from 0 to 2 to 4 points really quickly just by slamming a Xin Zhao on turn 2. One of the best play patterns, in my opinion, for this deck right now is just going unit, Xin Zhao, and just going in and attacking. It is so strong to have both battlefields conquered on the first turn, because it almost guarantees you to be going from 0 points to 2 to 3, and maybe even 4 depending on the matchup. So I really enjoyed that. So I really wanted to build more into that, and some of the supporting cast of this deck I really love. I'm looking mainly here, you have one big combo that everyone's been talking about for a while, which is Imperial Decree and Bellows Breath. Now, Imperial Decree on its own within this deck is so strong. You send in a 1-might unit, one of your recruits, or even a throwaway unit like a factory manufacturer, and it will just destroy any might. Talking like big things like Ornn, Thousand-tailed Watchers, anything late game, it can just destroy them. There is one problem with that, though, and we can't go without saying that the menace of the format being Draven. You would have to go in multiple different times with just one unit to kill off multiple units because of how damage is assigned in this game. We'll go over those rules and everything else a lot later down the line, but that is still something you want to take into account when you're building your deck. Hence why Bellows Breath is so good in this deck. Being able to combo that with Imperial Degree can kill up to 6 units in a turn, and that is absolutely backbreaking for most decks in the game right now. So I really loved that, and I really wanted to build more into that as well. Now we'll talk about the card that I am not the biggest fan of, and I think is one of the hardest cards to actually utilize in the game currently, which is Time Warp. So Time Warp, yes, take an extra turn cards are awesome. It will allow you just to win the game out of nowhere. However, with the current cards that we have, you know, you've got Hard Bargain, you've got Wind Wall, you've got some crazy psychopaths running Mystic Reversal. It can be absolutely backbreaking to have this countered because it costs 4 power. So it sets you back from 10 runes or 12 runes to 6, maybe 8 runes, and that could feel terrible, especially if this doesn't go off. So I'm not completely sold on this card, and I ended up cutting it, and I feel really confident in it. I really like just not having it and not having to worry about if I draw this in a specific matchup. It's just a dead card. And overall, it's pretty good. As well as sideboarding. Sideboarding is a very complex topic overall. But when you're thinking about it from deck building, what you want to think about is what is prevalent in the metagame of where you're playing. So if you're playing more at locals, Nexus Knights, maybe sometimes heading out to a skirmish, what are the players playing around you playing, and what becomes the hardest matchup for you for there? If you're trying to play at a higher level, like the regional qualifiers, you got to think about what the metagame is. And for example, with Victor right now, after the bans, it's still pretty hard with Draven. So you want to really focus on Draven things, so you bring in another Imperial Decree, salvages for the gear-based decks, including Aurora. Aurora is still pretty strong. And overall, I really like where they went with this sideboard. So, with that being said, we'll take a look at my list. So, I have titled it the Glorious Aggro Lucian, because it's not actually Lucian, but, you know, for my Arcane fans, you'll get the reference. So, yeah, I personally have been having a ton of success with this deck. It is very, very fast. I'm usually ending games at the 15-minute mark, trying just to blow up the board and completely take over a game before anyone realizes what happens. So, one of the big changes I made is Singularity. So that's where I cut the Time Warp. I put a Singularity in because I think Singularity, being able to hit backline, is so strong in this game. And obviously for my newer players, what does hitting backline means? It means hitting units in their base. Most cards in the game, and especially in this deck, have the requirement of saying at a battlefield. Singularity does not. Singularity just says up to 2 units. So being able to snipe out their Draven in base, or snipe out Renata Glask, for instance, yellow Renata Glask, that is such a big one to get off the field for this deck. But really, overall, that's the biggest change I made to this deck, was swapping that out. Obviously, we still have the Vengeance in here, because after playing this card's an absolute house. If you draw this, you just kill a unit straight up. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just anywhere. You just kill it. Feels pretty good in a lot of matchups. And I kept the sideboard pretty much the same because it's very based on the meta. And I have seen a lot of consistency with this deck of being able to see, like right here with the hand section, you can just draw and open a hand. And this is perfect. I mean, if I saw this in a game, I would be so happy. I'd probably ship just this Wages of Pain, depending on the matchup, and have another unit. Wonderful. This feels great. Because the power of Victor being able to guarantee that the Xin is coming out on turn 2 ready is so big. And making sure you layer your plays is obviously something pretty important as well, but not too terribly important. So, when you're trying to figure out these decks, obviously take your inspiration, but take what you want to do with the deck. Obviously, this is my biggest change. I went with Arena's Greatest. I want these games to be fast and be dictated by about turn 3 or turn 4 of how it's going to go. And I really enjoy it. It's very fast, and it plays to the playstyle I want this deck to feel like. And from here, now I have all of the ideas to make. Obviously, I need to make a guide for this deck, especially if more people want to try this out. I really enjoy it. It's very fun. And not only does this deck play the way I want it to feel, it also has the interaction, which is one of the bigger points to talk about when we're talking about deck building, is how are we going to interact with our opponent? A perfect example of this is going to be that we have 3 Hidden Blades, 3 Cold Weeks, 3 Stupefies, and 3 Wages of Pain. Those are our low-level interaction against any of our opponents on what they want to do. So, Stupefy, this card is what I like to call a modal card. So it has 2 different modes. One is giving the -1 to mess up the math in a combat. Say they come in with a 5 might versus your Xin Zhao and a token, and you cast Stupefy on their unit. Now, you, instead of 5 into 5, it is now 4 into 5, and you end up winning the combat from that. That's great. The other thing is this little piece of text right here. This piece of text is the best part about this card. Draw 1. This is a cantrip where you just throw it down for 1 and draw a different card. That is very strong in this deck because we are running pretty low on draw card effects, with the only one really being Hidden Blade. Hidden Blade is also another modal card where you can either use it to kill an opponent's unit. Say, for instance, like they're coming in with a Watcher. You just decide to blow it up with a Hidden Blade. Yes, you give your opponent 2 cards, but usually you're going to win the game from there. So that doesn't really matter. But on the flip side, if points are, say, at a point where you're at 6 and they're at 2, you could just Hidden Blade your own unit to draw 2. Which feels pretty good in this deck, considering, as I said, we have very minimal card draw within it. The other one is this. This, in my opinion, is probably top 3 spells in the entire game right now. With the current metagame being so reliant on having big units and early tempo, Cold a Week stops that tempo and can be very one-sided, especially in Victor. Say, for example, you have a Cold a Week, you go turn 1, you're on the play, you use your Victor Herald of the Arcane ability to make a recruit pass the turn. They play down a 3-drop, say, for instance, like a Lucian from their champion zone. Awesome! On your next turn, you take a battlefield, you play a unit to your base, and you Cold a Week. You kill their unit, they kill their unit, you kill your 1 might. You have essentially just traded a 1 might for a 3 might for 2 and a power. Technically 3 and a power if you want to get into semantics, but that's huge. Now you have the tempo lead, you have a unit holding at a location, so now it requires them to have a unit enter ready to contest that, or you're just going to hold the 2. And the following turn you can do some really fun shenanigans where, like, you make another unit in base and then Xin Zhao. And then you take over the other battlefield. Now, you have 4 might at a battlefield, that's pretty hard to deal with. So that's really what I think about when I'm trying to figure this out is, okay, do we have enough interaction? So we have 9 pieces of interaction on the low end. 12 if we count Bellows Breath, but Bellows Breath is pretty situational, and if you're not killing something with 1 might, it will cost 2 and 2 power, which hurts. So, on the early turns, we have a lot of options. Wages of Pain is so good. Being able to deal 3 to any unit at a battlefield and just have that damage stick and, make your Xin Zhao trade into something like a 6 might, like, say, for instance, a Riptide Rex, feels awesome. So, there's a lot of different ways to really interact. And that's another reason why I was not a fan of the Time Warp, I wanted a little bit more interaction. Just trying to taste my own deck. But that's why I went with more of a singularity. I want one more piece of interaction that's not just tap out for 1,000,000 and lose to a single card. So this, if it gets countered, I've got 2 more copies. With Time Warp, if it gets countered, I lose the game. So I'm a bigger fan of that. I did skip over when talking about sideboard. I did make one change. I kept the 1 salvage in main. I think that's more than enough right now with Aurora. But Lecturing Yordle, if you're going second, you just slam this card in. It helps. You have card draw now. Feels pretty good. Also, you can get it back with Glass Mycologist if you don't have a Zinzao, and it comes in and it draws you a card. That feels great. More card draw, the better. So, I really enjoy where I took this list. A bunch of the people I've played this against at locals have had a interesting time against it. It is very quick, but if you are able to keep me away from battlefields, it can be beaten pretty easily. So, this is a deck that I was thinking about bringing to Atlanta next week, which I'm super excited about. There will be a vlog of the RQ Atlanta that I will post after the event. We got a bunch of people from my local area going to this event, and we're all going to, make a vlog, have a great time, and just talk about our experiences, and go from there. So, be on the lookout for that for when I return. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you guys shared this video, gave it a like, and even if you want to see more, subscribe down below. The little red button. Really helped me out a lot. Show me you guys really want this. Comment below what you guys want me to talk about in a future episode of Run the Rift. This has been the first episode of Run the Rift. My name is Explosive, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Have a good one.